Hello everyone, I am Itash. I'm with my team Vinay, David, B, and Kate. We're teams Parks and Recs. And we're working with the Hermann Park Conservancy. So what was our problem that Hermann Park came up to us with? It was that HPC wanted us to address the lack of awareness in its sustainability and resiliency practices. So the solution we came up with is having signs and key locations around Hermann Park that encourage interaction with gardeners. Why gardeners? Because we found that gardeners are key to the sustainability practices at Hermann Park. And here's just a schematic of what our final prototype looks like, and we'll show you the actual prototype later in the presentation. So now I've already mentioned sustainability a couple of times, but what is sustainability in a park? So a sustainable park is one that not only looks after the natural resources of the park, but also promotes the quality of life for everyone visiting. Now that part is important because HPC really emphasizes the quality of life of people in terms of sustainability. And that's why we chose to focus our project on that aspect of sustainability. So who is our community partner? It's the Hermann Park Conservancy. They're a private non-profit organization that was made to operate, maintain, and conserve specific parts of the Hermann Park. So they also organize events on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Some of those include story times on Friday, or a kite festival, or bike races, annual bike race, which again bring the community together to Hermann Park. So now we define the problem, but who is our user? So meet John Hermann. Now John likes to walk around Hermann Park on a usual basis. He works at the Texas Medical Center and occasionally visits the park with his family. But one of the problems is when he sees something cool, he doesn't know who to ask about. Oh, what is this? Or he can't approach someone to learn more about things that are happening at Hermann Park. And so that's the user persona that we're targeting. But in general, it also targets visitors at Hermann Park overall. And now from that, we move on to our key insights.
So through our work and talking to people, we come up with 4 key insights. The first being that community involvement is really essential for park sustainability. The second is that there is a disconnect between HPC and park visitors. The third being that HPC wants to communicate the community involvement that already takes place and helps sustain the park. And then our most influential that really powered our final project prototype was that HPC gardeners are the face of the park and they have the most contact with visitors in terms of volume of contact and most influential contact. So from all these insights, we came up with this how can we statement of how can we make visitors at Hermann Park observe and engage in practices that sustain the park. And then we came up with these design goals. So the first is we wanted it to be harmonious in this space. We wanted it to work in naturally with the area of the park that we put it in. We wanted it to be accessible so that people of different languages and different walks of life could read it and understand. We wanted it to be durable against the elements because it's going to be outside. And we wanted it to be informative. And then we came up with 2 measures of success. The first being we wanted to increase the number of people that approach gardeners by about 20%. And then we wanted to increase the number of people who know what HPC is by 20% as well.
So with these things in mind, we came up with our first prototype. As you can see, it was on the whiteboard that we sort of laid this out. So we have sort of 2 prototypes on the whiteboard. On the left side, we have the sort of large, informative whiteboard prototype with meet the gardeners and then sort of a description of what the job of a gardener is and things to ask the gardeners to engage in conversation, and then a map of where the gardeners are situated. They have different roles in different parts of the park. And on the right side, we just had a sort of a smaller sign with just questions so that they can engage with the gardeners. So we made this prototype and we tested it out with sort of the Open Studio members. So the key insights that we got from this is they all preferred this sort of sign on the right side, which is a lot simpler, a lot smaller, because they were sort of intimidated by the block of information, the big chunks of stuff that sometimes they might not want to know about. Having the staff on a map, we also realized from talking to Open Studio members, we realized that it was kind of problematic. it was almost like we were putting gardeners out as sort of an exhibition at the park, and we realized no one really wants to go to the park to go around and look for all the gardens. That's not what someone really does. And we realized that interaction with gardeners is not something that we can sort of force on people, but that we should take a more open door approach to break down the barriers so that when someone wants to talk to a gardener, they don't have to feel like, oh, this is not part of the job, I don't want to disturb them while doing their job. We want to make the sign to say, hey, invite that person in and say, hey, we're doing our job, but you can also come and talk to us.
So, taking this feedback into consideration, we made more prototypes, and we focused on two main areas. First, the layout of how the signs would be structured, and the content that we would actually be putting on the sign. So, these were our first prototypes made, just trying different layouts based on what each of our group members thought. We found that, particularly the prototype on the top left was nice because people found the accessories with the gardener to be appealing and having the bullet points as icons to be informative. But we did receive, and then in testing this prototype, we took it to studio where we had the help from all of you wonderful people and got a lot of feedback about this. And this is kind of one of our sticky notes in terms of what feedback that we got and what designs people liked. So the feedback that we went forward with improving upon is starting out by making sure that the sign would be landscape. Having a landscape design kind of felt like it was a better use of space and information. Next, like I mentioned before, having accessories or tools with the gardener kind of made them seem more friendly and approachable, which is one of the main goals of this. Finally, we used icons for bullet points, and we decided the speech bubble was unnecessary. In terms of content, we started out with this sign for content, talking about how there were exotic plants around the world in the family gardens, how you can cook with the different plants, and different events in the family gardens, such as story time, and finally how to get involved in Hermann Park. With this content, we had three main points of improvement. First, we wanted to say meet the gardeners instead of meet our gardeners. Although we intended to have meet our gardeners to make it seem more like the Hermann Park family, we went with the to make it seem more general and not kind of isolating people. We also changed the ordering of bullet points so that more general things that people could talk to gardeners were at the top, more specific things that more invested people would be interested in were at the bottom. Finally, we went with topics that lent themselves to conversation. We didn't want to put on things that people could just ask a gardener or just Google on their phone. We wanted to have something that people actually needed to talk to someone about.
With this, we have our final prototype, which is first, our site is family gardens, and something we kind of incorporated in this type was that there was a lot of wood in family gardens, so one of our design goals was to be harmonious, so we kind of have this texture of the wood, and this is our final prototype. So we wanted it to be scored on wood, so it blends in with the site. The scale is questionable. And we can also put this sign in multiple places with just changing few things. For example, the only thing specific to the family gardens here is kind of the parts of the road represented here, and you can also do little changes and put it in Centennial Garden pathways, which are very empty, where people can see the gardeners and talk, and also in the rose gardens, which is right across from the family gardens. So we'd like to thank you for our mentor, Richard Johnson, our community partner, Hermann Park Conservancy, all of you Open Studio members who helped us test, and our studio leads. And for the next step of this project would be meeting with Hermann Park Conservancy again and implementing it and having a better, less burned model. Any questions?
So I think this is a novel concept what you came up with, because earlier you were searching for how to tell a story, and then you're getting the staff to tell the story, which is really wonderful. So what sort of training do you anticipate is necessary from HBC's perspective of their staff so that they're ready to tell the story?
So we actually went and talked to the gardeners, and this was inspired by the stories that they were already telling us. So we sat with them and talked for probably an hour and a half, and they just had stories and stories. And one gardener named Maureen, she was like, I have worked here for less than a year, and I could talk to you for 6 hours. So what we we talked about was more like having HPC talk with their gardeners about being open to tell the stories, but they kind of just come up with their stories on their own, and hopefully through encouraging people to interact with gardeners, then the stories will continue to build.
I was going to ask if you spoke to the gardeners. I'm happy to hear that you did, because I think that's really important. But do you feel like there's maybe something that you can kind of, like, I keep seeing these T-shirts pop up, and I'm like, something that says, you know, hi, I'm the gardener, do you have a question, or something like that, to kind of bring it another level, to identify that this is who this person is.
So the question was, what's a way to like basically identify the gardeners? So on this sign, it's kind of small right here, but we have like the Hermann Park logo printed onto it. But that's also something we were discussing of a way to like show, to let people know that they were gardeners. And I think that's a question that we're gonna probably talk to Hermann Park and so and see what they answer.
Yeah, because right now all the gardeners, they all have like the same green shirt with this logo on it, so that's why we have it here, so it kind of like helps identify.